Hello everyone, hope you're all well, and thanks very much for all the support with my videos, the comments, likes and shares, and thanks to everybody who subscribes to my YouTube channel as well. I'm very grateful. Today I want to speak about a couple of things that's been happening internationally and here locally in Ireland. The World Health Organization pandemic treaty hasn't been agreed upon in the last number of days, but I'll speak about that in a couple of minutes. And in the last number of days we've had a visit to Ireland by Gordon Brown, who himself has been doing quite a bit of work for the World Health Organization and was the UN Special Envoy for Education and has been around and touring quite a number of countries around eradicating child poverty. Now, Gordon Brown was the former Chancellor of the Exchequer of Tony Blair's government, famous New Labour, and Margaret Thatcher once famously said that one of the best things about her government was that it led to Tony Blair and his New Labour and the privatisation agenda, which is the same as we have a Labour Party here in Ireland as well, that are very much focused on the neoliberal agenda and more austerity. So they did a lot of the same policies and implemented them here when they were in government of Fine Gael, but of course they want people to forget about all this. But Gordon Brown himself was a former Prime Minister of Britain, has been in Ireland over the last number of days at a child poverty and wellbeing summit organised by Simon Harris. Leo Varadkar, previous Taoiseach, had a special part of his office put aside for childhood poverty, but of course childhood poverty is on the increase, so is deprivation in Ireland. We've seen huge crises with children in homeless accommodation. Over 4,000 children are in homeless accommodation today. There are many more who are struggling to get hospital appointments. Many more again being pushed into deprivation, pushed into poverty. And with the spiralling cost of living disaster facing us because of sky high energy bills and food prices as well, that's driving more and more people over the edge and into abject poverty and deepening inequality. And this is an Irish society where we have the top 1% of the population have a huge amount of the wealth when you consider the inequalities and the divisions in society. As I've said before, 2 billionaires have the same wealth as the bottom 50% of the population here in Ireland. But Gordon Brown has been pushing these neoliberal agenda, neoliberal project as well, and has been doing quite a bit of work for the World Health Organization. Also has been pushing this pandemic treaty. Again, he was a former global leader of the famous World Economic Forum, along with many more like Nicolas Sarkozy, Angela Merkel, Barroso as well, the President of the European Commission, of course Tony Blair and Sanna Marin, Jacinta Ardern, and many more, and our own Leo Varadkar here in Ireland. It's quite interesting as well because they've been pushing this agenda about trying to keep us safe. This is the premise of this pandemic treaty that's been discussed and hasn't been agreed upon, and which is a good victory for people, the fact that it hasn't been agreed upon, but there still are a lot more dangers in place because the whole spirit and emphasis of this treaty that wasn't agreed on in the last number of days is still being pursued through the World Health Assembly as well. There was issues raised by a couple of countries. Slovakia were one last year that raised serious concerns about the issues that came up during the pandemic. We all know about the greatest transfer of wealth towards the billionaires, made the rich richer. Big global corporations got richer, and the draconian impacts on people's basic rights through lockdowns. Now this is interesting because, interestingly enough, they're talking about childhood poverty and eradicating childhood poverty, but they were the ones that forced more people into poverty and caused incalculable damage to a lot of children in terms of their development and a lot missing hospital appointments. And that was across the spectrum of society, including elderly people also as well. But of course in Ireland they're not even talking about the pandemic anymore. They're not talking about the COVID inquiry that they were due to have the terms of reference for already. Was it 5-6 months ago? Let's forget about it over the next period of time and move on. Nothing to see here. And they'll watch how the other whitewash campaigns are going and inquiries are going in other countries such as Britain. And we see across up in the occupied 6 counties up the north, so what's happening up there also as well. Now it's interesting because over 190 members are looking to force some form of agreement in this. As I said, it's been rejected for the time being, but of course these globalists won't stop now. They'll keep pushing on And as I said, they're looking for more centralised control and to get ready for more preparedness for future pandemics. But as I just said previously, there wasn't much agreement on this by a number of countries. It comes down to their own corruption and greed and looking at who controls and who's going to benefit from the next pandemic. So we had this once in 100 years pandemic, but now they're going to get ready for the next one over the next number of years because of who knows. And they're going to be talking about the vaccines as well in terms of who's going to profit from the vaccines. And there was disagreement about the cost of these vaccines for the big global corporations also as well. So, and intellectual property rights actually was discussed as well, and one note of disagreement amongst them. So it's quite interesting to see how this develops over the next period of time. The pushback must continue. In Ireland, we've seen the huge erosion of our sovereignty. We've seen that through the European Union. We've seen that through more global powers. And we've seen it through global entities. And we all look behind who's profiting from these huge entities. It's the super rich, it's the wealthy, it's the top 1% of society, bankers and these global corporations and big pharmaceutical companies who always profit and really rip away the facade of democracy in terms of national parliaments as well, and the erosion of national and community sovereignty. And that's why it's critically important to bring power back to our communities. We've seen a huge pushback over the last number of months, in particular in Ireland, because of the referendums and the comprehensively defeated referendums, and all the government organisations along with the political establishment don't want to talk about this anymore. This is like their Men in Black moment where everything was erased from people's minds and they don't want to discuss what went on during the referendum that they were comprehensively defeated in. Apologies for that. But comprehensively defeated, and shows how out of touch and disconnected they are, much the same as how they're going to try and push through this pandemic treaty. They're going to try and keep pushing it through the World Health Assembly. So while it's a slight victory over the last number of days in terms of this being rejected, it is a bigger attack towards the erasure and erosion of Irish sovereignty by giving more power across these centralised bodies who are benefiting, as I said, the super rich and the global corporations at the expense of ordinary people who suffer. And to go back to the original issue I was talking about with Gordon Brown and poverty, and this is how it emphasises itself through forcing more people into poverty, more deepening inequality in society, and a huge more transfer of wealth towards the billionaires out of the public funds. This is how it operates. This is how neoliberalism has operated for years, and now it's moving on to a more sinister phase in terms of the control by these big corporations over people's daily lives. And we've seen that through the attack on our basic rights over the last few years, and we've seen it in particular with the so-called attack on misinformation stroke disinformation. In a democracy, you're supposed to have different points of view, you're supposed to have dissent, you're supposed to have criticisms, critique of policies. This is the fundamental premise of any democracy. And the illusion will be ripped away as they move towards more centralised power. We see it happen through the European Union, through Ursula von der Leyen, and we see it now with the bigger power grab and the European members of Parliament. Now they're pushing for this, or pushing for more of the big power grab. And they use whatever tools they are available to keep taking power away from people. As I've said before, over 70% of the legislation comes from the European Union, comes through the big lobby groups as well. And now with these big global bodies eroding our basic sovereignty, which is again an attack on ordinary working class people's rights. But ordinary people struggle for rights. This is how change comes from. It comes from below, and it always will fundamentally come from below, coming from people organising their communities across their countries and speaking out and standing up about what's wrong in society, so our community needs are met and our national needs are met and the needs of ordinary people are met up and down the country and in all parts of the world as well. So again, thanks for joining me today on the video, and I really appreciate it, and thanks for all the support with my work as well. And please press subscribe to my YouTube channel, Peter Dooley Dublin, and thanks for all the support. And June the 7th, I'm running the local elections for the Kimmage Mines area. We need to bring power back to our communities. We need to get the needs of our communities met, and I'll be campaigning hard for that as well. So please share my videos to anybody in the local area. We need to bring power back to our communities and let people's voices be heard and be central to the decision-making process. It needs to come back. We need to stand up against this, what's going on, and take power back to our communities so people have decisions based on what we need in our society, where our basic rights are upheld, that many people have struggled for time and time again, and many generations have, ordinary working class people have struggled for these rights and won them. So thanks again for all the support, and take care. See you all soon. Bye bye.